I've just returned from a trip overseas and I can't wait to share with you my tips for making sure your pets are well cared for whenever you go away. Hello and welcome to the Natural Animal Podcast. I'm your host, Ruth Hatton. I'm an animal naturopath and big animal lover. Here on the show, we share thoughts and ideas about the nature of animals, their preferences, their behaviours, their ways of being, to engender a greater understanding, respect, compassion, and love for all animals, companion, farm, and wild. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode, which is brought to you by Frontier Pets, creators of nutritionally superior pet food inspired by traditional whole food diets with a modern and ethical approach. Stay tuned for a special podcast announcement. Hello. I feel like it's been forever since I've spoken with you, probably because I've been overseas for the last couple of weeks. And whilst there were still shows on the podcast, they were all scheduled before I left. So it just feels like I haven't done one of these for ages. And actually I haven't recorded an episode for ages. So I'm a bit excited to come to you today after my little time away. And, you know, when we go away, when we leave our animals, it can be really nerve-wracking, basically. I found it to be nerve-wracking because I haven't left my cats alone for like overnight or longer for an extended period since 2017. So what's that, 7 years? And that trip was a holiday that was about 10 days. Between that trip and my recent trip, the longest I'd left my cats for was like 1 to 2 nights. And when I did that, my mother would stay at my home to look after them. So I was never really worried about anything. But a few years ago, my mother returned to our home country, the UK, England. And so I lost my pet sitter. And so a situation, an event, it's really hard for me to put this into words, but last month, there came a need for me to go overseas, to go home to England, for a very sad reason. My father passed away. And so my sister and I decided to go back there for his funeral. So as you can imagine, this was an emotionally challenging period. I had to, we had a couple of weeks notice, a few weeks notice, that of when the funeral was scheduled. And so, we booked our flights and had some time to prepare. Obviously running a business, I had to make sure that everything was put in place, that, a certain amount of work that, that I was meeting client expectations and client needs, that I was making sure all the systems were set up so everything would run smoothly. Whilst away, I recorded and produced, I think it was like 3 podcast episodes in that last week before I went away, and scheduled them all and did all the socials for it. So it was a really hectic and emotionally overwhelming time. And in that period, before that period, before I even decided that I could go, I had to make sure that, that trip was basically dependent on me having someone suitable to care for my cats whilst I was gone, because I couldn't just abandon them and leave them with anybody. And because I hadn't, because I lost my pet sitter, my mum, to the UK some years back, I wasn't going away anywhere. So I hadn't had the opportunity or the experience of having someone look after my cats in my absence for an extended period, or even just like overnight. Like I've been home like all the time. I have not gone away even for a night in the past 3 years. So I had to find someone who I could wholeheartedly trust to look after my animals in the way that I consider appropriate and in the way as close as possible to how I care for them. Um, they are my heart and soul, and they are my top priority. And so that was just, a non-negotiable. I wouldn't have been able to go if I didn't have a suitable carer for my animals. And it was funny because in like the day after my father passed, like I hadn't decided that I was going to go over for the funeral. And that next day, I went to Office Works and I printed off some photos of my father. And when I was there, when I got out of my car, across the way, I saw a car with signage for a pet sitter. I think it was like Nora's pet sitting or something. And the signage on her car also mentioned that she was a vet nurse. And that can be really helpful to have a pet sitter who's a vet nurse, because particularly if your pets are on medications or any kind of supplementation regime, you're going to know that that person is going to be able to properly handle and administer, medication, supplements, what have you. So I went over there and I spoke to her and I asked her, I told her what was going on. I cried, she hugged me. And I asked her if she did overnight stays, and she said she only did pop-in visits. So we had this whole conversation around pop-in visits by a pet sitter, whether that's suitable for my circumstance and all of that. So that was kind of like, even though I hadn't decided to go, I was just like, this is interesting that I would see this person. So anyway, I've kind of jumped ahead, but in this program today, we are going to be talking about, what are those things to consider, like choosing the right carer for your animals when you go away. We're going to be talking about making sure there's plenty of food, how to make sure your animals are getting fed properly whilst you're away, providing a safe space for them, how to give clear instructions for your pet's carer and what those instructions should include. And emergency details. So we're going to cover all of these tips and all of these things that I had to do, that I had to go through, that I've also thought about that I didn't do, that I could/should have done to make the process kind of seamless and as relaxed as possible. So, I'll come back to the carer thing in a minute, but, because I had a lot of overwhelm in the lead up to it, a lot of emotional, dealing with the emotions of my father passing, it wasn't, your normal, I'm going away for a holiday situation. And normally when you go for a holiday, you've got a lot of time to prepare. So this was kind of like, a unique, not an experience unique to me, because obviously this happens to other people as well, but it was more of a unique travel experience than going away for a holiday. When you go away, when you're planning on going away for a holiday, you're not feeling sadness, about losing someone. You're feeling excited. Oh my God, I'm going to Paris, Greece, Tuscany, whatever, wherever you're going, Vietnam, like you're excited about this trip. And like I said, you usually have a lot more time to prepare and make sure everything is set in stone. But this show is going to help you really identify those things that you can do to make sure that your animals are happy whilst you're away. And I've also created a handy little download of a handy little downloadable checklist. Check the show notes for the link to that, so that you've got that as a really useful resource in your in planning for trips away going forward. So the first thing is like choosing that right carer. So for me, it's like, I didn't have anyone that I'd used before. Now, if you've had someone who you've used before to care for your animals whilst you're away, and they've been compatible, they've been a good match, everything went really, really well, we've already got that person. So that's brilliant. Like that's step one ticked, taken care of, right? But if you're like me and you didn't have anyone, right? It's so important to make sure that you have the right carer for your animal whilst you're away. You're not there. So they're being like a substitute for you. Your animals are usually dependent upon you. When you're away, they're going to be dependent on their carer. So you want to make sure you've got the best, most suitably qualified person to look after your beautiful, beautiful companion animals. So, you've got things like I said, you've got the pet sitters that are available, like the people who actually do pet sitting professional pet sitters who do pet sitting as business. And you have basically two options. You can have a pet sitter who comes and just visits. I think you need this like one daily visit or two or multiple daily visits. And for some animals, that will be perfectly fine. I didn't see that as an option for me. Now, interestingly, Nora from Nora's Pet Sitting, I can't remember the correct business name, but when we were speaking about the whole, because I'd asked her, do you do overnight stays? And she said no. She mentioned to me how for a lot of cats, they don't actually like a stranger staying in their house, in their territory. And I completely resonated with that, completely got that. And I thought, yeah, my cats wouldn't like a stranger in their house. It's like their territory. Who is this strange person? And so that may not be an option, particularly if you've got cats. For dogs, they're not so sensitive to strangers as cats are. But that's that's a generalization. If you have a dog that's particularly stressy or sensitive or concerned, reactive around strangers, then a stranger is not going to be a suitable option, right? And obviously, if you hire someone, you need to make sure that there's a meet and greet, right? So they come to your house, they meet your animal, you can assess their compatibility. Are they a match? Does your animal shy away from the sitter? Does your animal go towards the sitter, spend time with your sitter, allow the sitter to pat them, touch them, speak to them, things like that? All those things that are helpful for you to assess, are these 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, depending on however many animals you have, are these a good match? Because you do not want someone, if your animal shies away from them, if your animal shows them no interest or just, clears away and moves out and just wants nothing to do with them. So really important to do that meet and greet. To do an interview, right, with this person, to have a little, have questions that you want to ask them, find out about their experience. Are they better with cats or dogs, depending on what species of companion animal you have, their experience with giving medications, with giving supplements, their openness to feeding, are they going to be prepared to feed homemade meals, right? And obviously you're going to prep all that before you go away. That's really important, and we'll be covering that. But all those little niggly things, this is an interview. This is an opportunity for you to assess if this person is the right person to care for your animals in your absence. And that applies whether they do home visits or overnight stays. So you've got that option of, multiple daily visits, which may or may not work for your animal, depending on their own individual behaviors, characteristics. And then you've got those pet sitters that do overnight stays. Now, in that whole interview process, if you've done the interview and you really love this person, your animals love this person, then I strongly recommend doing an overnight trial. You can also do a daily visit trial with the pet sitters that are just offering the daily visits, like get them to come to your house and do what they would do as part of that visit. If they are doing overnights, get them to have a trial overnighter. And let them care for your animal. You're still there, but let them care for your animal that night as they would if you weren't there. And then you can assess them. Are they going to be able to handle this? Is your animal going to be able to handle this person in this scenario? So you've got that pet sitter professional, and you're going to meet them. You're going to allow your animals to meet them. You're going to interview them. You're going to do a trial, whether that's a daily visit trial or an overnight trial. There is another option of doing the cattery kennel scenario. And for some animals, that works fine. I don't do it. I did it once with my cat, Lily. She didn't speak to me for like a week. It was horrible. So I would never do it again. Cats especially, they are so attached to their home. Putting them in a cattery can just be too stressful for them. Dogs can do fine in a kennel situation, but again, it's going to depend on your dog. Will your dog be okay in a kennel situation? Remembering that they're not going to get the same attention they would if they had a pet sitter in the home, especially if it was an overnight stay pet sitter. So if your dog requires a lot of attention, a lot of connection, then I would question whether a kennel is going to be the best thing for them. You've also got the situation where they are going to be exposed to other animals. It can be really, really noisy. For any kind of stressy animal, that boarding situation is unlikely to be ideal. You know, kennels and catteries will take your instructions on food. You can leave food with them. One issue can be vaccines. Like a lot of places require vaccines. Some more modern places will accept titer testing to show that they have sufficient antibodies against common canine, feline diseases. But you do need to provide that assurance to the catteries and the kennels that they are sufficiently protected, whether they're vaccinated, whether they have adequate antibodies against those common diseases, making sure that they're happy to give the supplements and things like that. So it's just a bit of like, that's kind of, I would place that option at the bottom. Like, if you can't find anything else, then that's your only option, then that's your only option, right? But I prioritize, and I would prioritize, and I recommend you prioritize having someone come to your home. Now, there are pet sitters that care for animals in their own homes. Again, this can work. It's going to depend on your individual animal. For cats, they want to be in their own home. They want to be there in their own territory. For some dogs, that might be the same as well. Some dogs do not go well with other dogs. So being in a situation where they're at the pet sitter's home with a whole bunch of other dogs may not be the best option, particularly if they're reactive or if they're stressed around other dogs, right? So you've got your cattery kennel situation, you've got your pet sitter situation, home visits or overnight. My preferred option, and the thing that I do, is if you get a family member or a friend to stay at your home whilst you're away. This is my preferred option and the only option that I do. I have done pet sitters before. I used to have a brilliant, brilliant person when I lived in Sydney. I went away a lot when I lived in Sydney, like multiple times in a year. And I always used the same lady, and she was amazing, and the cats loved her. So it was like a perfect arrangement. But for me now, it's kind of like you got to get over that hurdle of that first introduction of having that stranger in your house. And if you've got the time to do that, to do the trials, then that can be the perfect scenario. But I always think if you can do this, if you've got a family or a member or a friend who can stay at your home, that's the best option. Because one, your animals are in your own home, they're in your own environment, they've got all your stuff around, everything's familiar, all the smells, all the sounds and everything. It's going to mean their routine is more consistent, everything's more consistent. It's going to mean less stress for the animal, right? And that's what we want. We want the least stress possible for your animal when you go away. As I said, I used to have my mum, and then my mum returned back to the UK and I had no one. So when this situation came up, I was like, oh my God, who am I going to get to look after the cats? And so all of my friends have their own animals, their own families. A lot of them have kids and things like that. And it's like, well, that's not going to work. It's got to be someone who can actually leave their animals, leave their family, come and stay at my house and look after my animals. So I only had one option. My beautiful dear friend, Kathy, who has cats of her own, mad cat lover like me, has met my cats, literally came to my house and met my cats about 2 to 3 weeks before I got the news of my dad. And, the cats approached her and were very relaxed with her. She's got her own cats, but she's also got a husband. So her husband, can adequately look after the cats. Her stepson was also staying with them for most of the time when I was going to be away. So they loved her stepson. So that was another carer who would be there, another consistency that her own cats would have when she came to look after my cats. She was very aware that I had particular protocols around the way that I care for my cats, obviously being an animal naturopath. And she didn't have a job that she had to go to. Like she runs her own business. So, she's on her own flexible routine. So that's a factor as well, right? So she didn't have to be anywhere at a particular time, like on a daily basis. Obviously she had commitments that needed to be taken care of, but it was easy for her to travel to those commitments from my home. So I approached her and I asked her, and thank goodness she said yes. So much gratitude. And she knows this, but if you're listening, Kathy, you know how grateful I am that you were able to step up and look after my babies at this really trying time for me. And yeah, so they're basically your options in terms of who's the right carer going to be for your animal. Just reading my notes here. Yeah, really important that they love animals. Yours especially. Really important that you trust them to care for your animals. I've spoken about a trial period to assess compatibility. So yeah, that's kind of like, how do you choose the right carer for your animals? Next, we're going to move on to food because food is so important. And, I said before about maintaining consistency. We want to maintain a consistent food routine. And what I mean by that is maintaining your pet's usual diet, right? There are some disclaimers or some circumstances that might occur where that might be slightly different. But generally speaking, maintain your pet's usual diet. It's already stressful enough that you're not going to be there. And so consistent routines include consistent diet routines. So that's meals and treats. What you normally feed them, make sure they're feeding that food when you're away. Make sure there's plenty of their food. Now, I think it would be a terrible situation if you're an unreasonable, frankly, if you are requiring your pet sitter to go out and buy your pet's food. Your pet sitter is going to be bombarded with so much new information. And so you need to make it as streamlined and as simple for them as possible. Because remember, it's all about minimizing stress for you, for your animals, for your pet sitter, to ensure that your pets are getting the best care, right? Like anything, we have to consider stress as a factor. So making sure that you've got all of their food. If you're not able to source all of their food for whatever reason, mine was an emergency visit, but I did have some time to plan. You might be in a situation where you've got to go tomorrow and you have no time to go to the shops, right? There's always extenuating circumstances that might arise. In a situation like that, then you need to make sure that you're giving your pet sitter, your carer, pet's carer, details about what your animal eats and where they can go and buy it from, and obviously give them the money so that they can go and buy it. You can't expect your pet sitter to cover your pet's expenses whilst you're away, right? So have a little cat pet slush fund, but not really a slush fund because it's for essentials, right? If you're home prepping your animals' foods, you may need extra containers. What I did for me, and also like if you're home prepping or if you're getting food delivered, you may need to organize an additional delivery, right? For me, the time that I was away did not neatly align with my pet food, with the organic meat delivery schedule. And so I had to change the schedule. I had to do all the calculations, look at all the days, look at what food they had, when would they, how many meals will they need, da, da, da. Do all those calculations to make sure that your animals are going to have all the food there ready for them. So I had to organize and change the delivery schedule. I had to order more containers because there was going to be a crossover. I also didn't want a situation because of delivery dates. There's a few days when I got back that I needed to also make sure that there was food there because, the next delivery date, it's actually coming up this Friday. So I needed to make sure that there was food right up until the day I returned yesterday and also up until the next delivery. So whether you're doing home prepping or getting regular food delivery, making sure that there's going to be enough food, right? It all comes down to enough food. For those kind of like convenience meal options, also go shopping and buy those foods. I would say buy more than enough because you never know what might happen. Maybe you need to stay away for longer. Maybe there's delays, right? There might be a cancelled flight or something. So making sure there's extra, not just for when you're away, but like what I've done for when you come back. Like I flew from England. So it was like, 24, 30 plus hours when you think about time to and from the airport, including the flight and the layover time and all of that. So the last thing, whilst I did do some grocery shopping on my way home from the airport yesterday, I didn't have to go and buy pet food. I didn't have to go and buy kitty litter because I made sure that there was enough before I went away. What else? Now, if your pet can be finicky about food, make sure a couple of options here. Make sure they have options, right? My cats eat 3 different kinds of foods. They have 2 convenience foods, one canned, one frozen raw, and the other is their homemade dinners. So making sure that you've got options and making sure that you've got your animal's favorite foods in stock for their carer. Also, if they're finicky about food, keep the food as simple as possible. So to give you an example, Max can be finicky about food. Sometimes he doesn't feel like eating, so I needed to let the pet center know that. Sometimes he doesn't want food with supplements in. So I basically just really, really simplified Max's diet plan. When I was away, I basically just said, look, feed a combination of feed just the canned food for dinner with supplements, because he always eats his canned food with the supplements in there, because I wanted to make sure he got at least some of his supplements whilst away to maintain his health and vitality. And then slightly modified his breakfast as well. So leftover meat from the night from the dinner meals and the frozen raw, which I know he loves and he always eats that. I think I said for that meal, no supplements. So he only got about 50% of his usual supplement load whilst away, but at least he was getting something, better than nothing. And report from my cat sitter, from Kathy, during the time that I was away and when I got back, is Max ate most of his food. So this is like brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. I'm actually going to basically kind of incorporate what I got Kathy to do whilst I was away, just to make my life a bit easier now in terms of his, tendency to be a bit finicky. So yes, that's the food. That's what I recommend around food. The next thing is safe space. Really important that your home is still a safe space. You're not going to be there. This can be a huge stressor for your animal. I was so worried about this. And I was so surprised, nicely surprised, how well LV coped. Like he just attached to Kathy. Like they were like best buddies. She sent me photos of him sleeping on her bed, sitting next to her, sleeping with her. And I thought he was going to be the problem, not the problem, but I thought he would be the most challenging. I thought he was going to pee on my bed, all those kinds of things. Didn't. And I warned Kathy about that. I said, could you please check my bed every day to make sure Elvie hasn't peed on there? Because the last thing is I don't want to come back home after being away for 12 days and Elvie hadn't peed on everything, and then I'd never get that smell out. So she's like, yes, and she did that. And he didn't pee on my bed once. And normally he'll do that if he's not happy with something or he's trying to get my attention. So that was like fabulous. The other little thing about peeing is the last trip that I went on way back in 2017, LV peed in my suitcase the night before I went away. I made the mistake of leaving it open and I had all my packing in there, and I had to fly with my suitcase with all my stuff in there and LV's pee in there. It was absolutely gross. And then when I got to my accommodation, I had to wash everything, wash the suitcase and all of that. So be mindful when you're packing. You've got a cat who's got a tendency to pee in your suitcase, or even a dog, because they're like, I don't want you going away. When you're packing, make sure and you leave your suitcase, close it. Never leave it open, unsupervised, to avoid the chance of your animal peeing in your case before you go. Lessons, learn from my mistakes, right? Ever wish mealtime could be more exciting and nutritious for your pet? Let me tell you about Frontier Pet's new whole food nutritional boosters, a game changer for fussy eaters and anyone looking to boost their pet's health. And if you happen to be going away, these could be a handy helper that you can leave with your pet sitter for some extra yummy goodness and to help with meal times. These vet-developed, freeze-dried raw boosters come in 3 varieties: super greens, free-range beef organs, and free-range green tripe. That'll not only enhance your pet's meal with natural flavors, but also add vibrant color and texture to every bowl. With each sprinkle, you'll be giving your dog and cat an all-natural nutrition upgrade while supporting their gut health and overall well-being. So why not add a dash of flavor and excitement to your pet's meals? Find Frontier Pet's whole food nutritional boosters at frontierpets.com.au and give your pet the boost they deserve. And for a short time, Frontier Pets have a special introductory offer on their boosters, giving you 15% off. So back to safe space. Minimizing stress, really, really important. Talk to your pet. Let them know that you're going away. Let them know who will be looking after them, that you'll be home soon, that you love them and you'll be thinking of them. I did this. I mentioned it multiple times before I went away, but I also organized for an animal communication session. I'm very lucky to have a few animal communicator friends. And so a close friend of mine who was also, I nominated her with her approval, obviously, to be the backup carer. More on that soon. I'd spoken with her and asked her if she could, check in with my cats and just let them know what was going on. And so she did that. And this was my briefing that I said to her. She was like, what do you want me to say? And so I basically wanted Jenny to clearly communicate with the cats that I'm going away for 12 darks. Now, in animal communication, animals don't really know about time. Like you say 24 hours, they're like, huh? If you say 2 weeks, huh? Even though we're saying 12 darks, but dark is obviously night, light is day. So, they communicate telepathically. So in images and sharing those images. And so you can imagine a dark is a night and how many darks are going to be away. So I asked Jenny on my list of the things that I wanted the cats to know was I'm going away for 12 darks because I need to for my human family. That I love them so much and will be thinking of them all the time and sending my love, that Kathy will be here to care for them, feed them, pat them, love them, that they are safe, and I'll be back and can't wait to come home to them, to request that they please be on their best behavior for Kathy, that Max that he eats his food without fuss, and that I'll be calling over the computer to speak to them. Also, that Kathy won't be letting them out in the garden, just on the deck, and for Elvie to please come in when Kathy asks him to. So that was what I asked Jenny to share with him. Max didn't really care about not going in the garden. Elvie did. Elvie really likes autonomy. He likes to have choices. And so when a choice is taken away from him, he doesn't like it, and it was kind of like, well, I can't. Like, I knew my garden is a bit challenging to get into for someone who doesn't know it. And also because I live in the forest. And so there's things like snakes and stuff like that. So my cats can get in trouble out there. And so for Kathy, I knew that Kathy wouldn't be comfortable, and I wouldn't expect any pet sitter to be comfortable in my particular situation. If your garden is safe and easy to get to, it's probably not a problem, right? But in my situation, I was like, it's summer, it's snake season. I don't want to have to worry Kathy about that. I don't want my cats to be bitten. It's easier for me to go out and check on my cats and get them in. But for someone who doesn't know my property, it's not so easy. And remember, we're talking about minimizing stress here to ensure the most pleasant experience possible. So you can hire an animal communicator to have that conversation with your animal. Even though I was doing it, I'm not an animal communicator. I wanted to make sure they got my message, because there has been previous occasions, Elvie, and it was the same animal communicator, Jenny. I had gone away for like a night or two, and I know I told Elvie that I was going away, and I told all of them I was going to go away when I was coming back. He told Jenny I never told him I was going away. I'm like, I so did. But I obviously or possibly didn't communicate it effectively. So I just wanted this as an assurance that they understood why I was going away, how long I'd be gone. I love them. What's going to be happening when I'm gone, so that they're not taken by surprise, right? I also did with my cats is I made up a bottle of my safe and secure flower essence. So this essence, for them to be given daily, frequently whilst I was away, just to manage that, help them to feel safe and secure even though I wasn't here. And so this is an essence blend that I traditionally recommend for separation anxiety. And so I reviewed it before I decided, and I was like, yes, this will be the perfect essence in this situation. So that is available on my 3 Rays Animal Apothecary website. There's a link to it in the show notes if you want to get your hands on that. Really, it's kind of like a really good thing to have as like a essential kind of like toolkit for your animals. ahead of any situations while, if they have separation anxiety, or if there are, urgent situations where you need to be away, or when you're going away, right? Just to help them feel safe. Would also be suitable if if you're putting them in a cattery or a kennel, really helpful as well. But then you're dependent upon the staff at the cattery or the kennel to make sure that they're giving it regularly enough. With Safe and Secure, with my Serenity Essence, they're both centered around kind of like stress, anxiety, worry. You give it twice a day, morning and night, but it's also the type of essence that you can give as often as needed, like hourly if needed. So in kind of like that cattery kennel environment, that may not happen. So, but if you've got that pet sitter coming to your house, staying at your house, then, hey, Maxie, it's more likely that they're going to receive that support. Managing your own stress in the lead up to your trip is important. Overwhelm can be common. I felt it at an extreme level, especially on the day that I flew out. It all kind of came crashing down and hit me. I actually, Kathy was here and I had gone out to do a few things, which I'll speak about in a minute as well, how important I think that is. So Kathy was here at home looking after the cats whilst I went out, and I came home and I just I was so stressed. I was so overwhelmed. I was running behind and I just burst into tears, like the sadness around my dad dying, about the reason for the trip. Like, this wasn't a holiday. This wasn't a fun trip. It wasn't going to be a fun trip. I hardly told anyone I was going. And then people that I did tell, they all thought I was going on a holiday. And I'm like, and they were like, have a great time. And it's like, I'm not going to have a great time. So, it all just came crashing down on me that day before. So managing your own stress in the lead up can be helpful. If you want to explore flower essences, then I would recommend my Serenity Essence for you. It can be helpful to manage stress. Another thing is to make sure that there are familiar scents and sounds in your home. So I use a playlist, particular Spotify playlist, when I'm doing my remote energy healing sessions. It's called Peaceful Meditation. Whenever I play that, my cats know, oh, it's energy healing time, and they're always quite relaxed when I play that music. So I knew that. So I showed Kathy that playlist on my Spotify, showed her how to access Spotify on my TV so that she could play that for the cats to help them feel relaxed, at peace and comfortable. Familiar scents, I showed Kathy where my essential oils are. I recommended that she use my balance blend from doTERRA. She could also use a blend of like lavender, frankincense, vetiver is another beautiful grounding, calming essential oil. So having those things to facilitate a calm environment, really, really beneficial. I spoke before about that familiar, consistent routine when I was talking about food. But it's also important that your pet can navigate their own usual routine so that they can, example, they sleep where they normally sleep. They eat when they eat when they eat. They eat when they eat. They eat when they normally eat. So not just what they're eating, but what time do they usually eat? When do they go for walks? Where do they go for walks? All of these things. Also things like, their behaviors, including any specific to them, unique type characteristics. Like Elvie does this thing every now and again where he has this little cough. It's like he's kind of like trying to cough up a hairball, but nothing comes out. So to someone who hasn't seen Elvie do that, if they do that when I'm not here, they might be quite concerned. Like, oh my God, something's wrong with him. So I explained Kathy about this little cough. I said, don't worry, he always does it. He's just kind of clear stuff. And I always just say to him, cough it up, and he's fine, right? But that's something that I know because I know my animals. Kathy won't know that, right? Your pet sitter won't know those specific behaviors, those personal, unique behaviors of your animal because they're unique to your animal, right? If they vomit, right? How if they vomit normally, like cats will usually vomit 2 or 3 times a week from like hairballs. If they're vomiting more than that from hairballs, then you can do things to prevent that, reduce that down, and you should do that. There can be things wrong with digestion, their diet, grooming, all those things can help to reduce hairballs. What are their normal activities? What are their preferences? What do they enjoy doing? Their outside time. Are they allowed outside? Where is their, do they have certain, a specific space outside where they're allowed to go? The times that they're allowed outside. So for me, my cats weren't allowed in the garden whilst I was here. So we kept the gate to the garden on the enclosure closed whilst I was away. But I said to Kathy, they can go out on the deck whenever they want, even in the nighttime, just make sure they're inside when you go to bed. So giving those instructions is important and helps to have that safe space for them. And safe is consistent, right? So what is consistent for your animal and maintaining that consistency will help with providing that safe space. The playtime, what is their playtime routine, their walk routine, brushing routines, things like that. One of the ways that Kathy connected, particularly with Elvie, was she brushed him all the time. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to come back and brush Elvie much more than I normally do, right? But it was a really great way for Kathy to connect to him because he just loved it. And he was, he was getting pampered. Max is not a huge fan of being brushed. So I said, he'll tolerate it a bit. But yeah, Elvie loves it. So doing all those things and thinking about your animal's consistent routine and recording that, letting your pet sitter know that this is the consistent routine and that be maintained whilst you're away. One of the really great benefits of having Kathy, and one of the reasons why I chose her, is Kathy does energy healing. She's actually my Reiki master. She taught me most of my Reiki training was done by Kathy, and this was just so beneficial. Anyone who's trained in Reiki is, generally speaking, more connected, has a higher intuitive connection, right? So they can tap in intuitively to things with much more ease than someone who doesn't have that training. And it's not to say that no one else has that intuitive capacity. Everybody does. But when you're trained in Reiki, that ability to tap into your intuition is heightened, right? It's just part of the Reiki training and activations that occur. So this was really beneficial for my animals. And there were times when Kathy intuitively identified that the cats would benefit from some Reiki. And so she did that. Now, your pet sitter may not be an energy healer, and that's absolutely fine. If they are, perfect, because that's going to add another element of support that is going to help your animal's experience be as calm as possible whilst you're not there. If your carer is not an energy healer, you can arrange for healings to be facilitated whilst you're away. So, for example, you can hire someone like me to do those remote energy healings. Obviously, you can also hire a sitter to come to your home and do an energy worker healer to come to your home and do those healings. But unless your animal has been exposed to that person before, I would discourage that during this period, because it's enough that you're not there and someone else is in the home. You don't want to add another stranger, into the mix, right? We want to keep things as consistent and familiar as possible. So if you've never had an energy healer come to your home and facilitate an energy healing for your animal, don't get someone to do home visits, get remote healing instead. So I do that. I offer that service. I'll pop a link in the show notes for that. And I would recommend for that, like a series of shorter, regular sessions. So for me, I've got a remote energy healing pack that's 180 minutes of energy healing. So, you might not use all of that whilst away, but we could do daily 15-minute sessions, every 2 days, every 3 days, weekly longer. We can talk about that in the lead up to when you're going away, about your animal and what frequency of sessions would be suitable, helpful, beneficial for your animal. I also offer crystal healing, which is a different form of energy healing. And there's a three session pack available with that. The packs are more economical. You do save money with the packs, but that can be a great add-on to when you go away to help clear out any stress, energy, uncertainty that your animals might be feeling when you're not there. Check in regularly with your sitter. I checked in daily. I thought I would, FaceTime, do video calls every day. I didn't. My circumstances just didn't really allow for that, but I probably did about, I think I did like 3 video calls during the time. And then we were messaging daily, and Kathy was sending me photos. And if I didn't hear from her, I'd be like, please send me an update. Please send me photos. I want to see my babies, that kind of thing. So do those things, you want to be assured when you're away that they're okay, that they're good, but also to maintain your connection with them. Like for me, it's like I'm so, used to having my animals around, and I felt that absence when I wasn't here. Um, and I needed that, right? Because I was dealing with some pretty full-on emotional stuff. So yeah, it was really good and important for me to have that connection. Um, Clear instructions. That's the next thing I want to talk about. Making sure, like all the things we've spoken about, some of that, falls into this tip, but you really want to make sure that your pet's carer has clear instructions. These can be written, but you could also do video or audio recordings, or and photos of your pet's meals, so your pet's carer knows what their meals actually look like once they prepared them. Not such a big deal when you're doing convenience feeding. You're just taking the food out of the container and putting it on the plate. But, for me, especially for the homemade meals, there's certain elements of it, and cutting things up and quantities, So Kathy actually took some photos of those meals, and that was helpful for her. You kind of want to provide, these instructions are kind of like, an operations manual. Like you don't need it because you know it. Your pet sitter doesn't know it. So instructions should include things like their food, meals and snacks, what they eat, when they're fed, how to make their food, how much food, those things. Supplements and medicines. So, where are they located? And clear instructions for dosages and administering, like how to give those medicines. Is it in food? Is it direct in the mouth? Is it on their coat? All those instructions are essential. Storm protocols, or any kind of extreme weather event protocols. If your pet gets scared during these extreme weather events, how to cope with that. What are the supports that you do for your animal to minimize stress in these extreme weather events? Also, you might have power cuts. Like Queensland, Australia, we have, often have power cuts when there's storms, right? So making sure there's candles, torches, esky or suitable storage if there's an extended power outage. You don't want the food going off, right? So all of those instructions are important and valuable, and they're things that you might not necessarily think about, right? And also letting them know where these things are. You might want to put it all into a box and say, here's your extreme weather event toolkit. Everything that you'll need is in here, right? So that they've only got to access it if they need to. Any health concerns with your animal, any dietary restrictions should go into these instructions. Contact details. How do they contact you whilst you're away? If you're not available, who's the alternate contact? Is it a family member or a friend that you're traveling with, or who knows your pets at least, probably won't know your pets as well as you do, but knows them better than your pet sitter, right? Emergency contacts. Who's the backup carer? Really important to have a backup carer. I had Jenny, I nominated, and, obviously she accepted. Jenny, my friend who did the communication session with the boys, she was the cat's backup carer. So if for whatever reason, Kathy had to go to Brisbane and be away overnight, or be away for an extended period and missed a mealtime or couldn't do something, Jenny was available to help out. So I shared Jenny's details with Kathy, Kathy's details with Jenny. Kathy we didn't need the backup, but it was there if it was needed, right? And also making sure that the backup carer had keys. So whether you're cutting a spare set of keys for the backup carer as well as your sitter, or in my situation, I've got a secure lockup box outside, and there's a spare set of keys in there. So then for me, it was like, I've got to make sure they know the code so that they get where the lockup box is so they can get in there. You'll obviously need keys for your pet sitter as well. So whether that's your own keys or whether you're getting a new set of keys cut. If you're getting a new set of keys cut, make sure they work before you go. You don't want to get to the airport and then get a phone call. I I can't unlock your door. The keys aren't working. Like, oh my God, major stress, right? Avoid that. Did I say contact details for your pet's vet? If I didn't, that as well. Emergency vet details in case there is an emergency. Instructions on your pet's behaviors. So I spoke about this before, their body language, their typical behaviors, their needs, their sensitivities, their motivations. For example, if Owie doesn't want to come inside, the best tool that I can use to get him inside is food, right? So what motivates your pet to do something if they're not responding to verbal instructions, right? Really important for your pet sitter to know that. Any specific triggers for stress, fear, or anxiety, like storms, fireworks, vacuum cleaners, and how the sitter can help to manage those triggers or to reduce the chance of those, manage the symptoms resulting from those triggers and or to reduce those triggers. Instructions around your animal's exercise routines, their walking routes, their favorite dog park. What do you walk them with? Making sure that they know where the lead, the harness, the halter, all those things are, so that they can do that. The times of walks, things like that. Remember, consistency. Any concerns about, that your animal might have being out in public? Do they need to keep your animal away from other people, other animals, other dogs? The pet sitter needs to know that information. Your animal's favorite toys or playthings. What are the house rules? Where are the pets allowed and not allowed? Are they allowed on the furniture, or is there certain furniture that they're not allowed on? Anywhere they're not allowed. What's the rules around outside time? All of those things. Spoke about storm care, all those extreme weather event details. And it might be, what are you using? Like, are you using any scents, safe spaces, flower essence, things like that? For my flower essences, I would do the Serenity or the Safe and Secure, and I've already mentioned those, and we'll pop links to those too in the show notes for you if you want to explore those and grab some of those. Other things as well, like non-pet specific, like, do you have plants that need to be watered? What's the schedule for that? And how much water? What are the bin days? How to use the Wi-Fi, making sure they've got the login details. I suggest getting them to log in before you go away and to set it all up so it's all, smooth transition. Any other details and things for any other household tech, make sure they have that information. Cleaning tips and supplies, like for the general cleaning of your home. You don't want to come home to a dirty, manky home, right? So how to handle animal messes like hairball, vomiting, or any kind of vomits or accidents, specific cleaners or methods that you prefer to be used, where to find them, how to use them, all of those things. I strongly encourage, what I found really well is Kathy came the day before I was due to fly out, and she stayed that night. And so that was really great because that means I could demonstrate everything to her. This is where they sleep. This is what they do. This is what they eat. This is how I feed them. This is where the cleaning stuff is. This is where that is. This is where the food kept. This is where the supplements kept. All those things. She got that demonstration, and she could see, and she could take her own notes in a way that she would understand them, on everything. And also, as I mentioned before, I went out when Kathy was here, and I had always intended to do that so that she had time alone with the cats to connect with them, to care for them without me, but before I went overseas. So to kind of introduce the three of them to being here alone without me being, the carer, right? So that was, I recommend that as well. That's really, found that really, really helpful to do that. Give your sitter a tour of your home if they haven't been there before, or even if they have been there before, they may not have been everywhere and know exactly where everything is, right? So do that tour, including your pet's spaces, where your sitter will be sleeping, how everything works, where things are, including kitchen items, fresh linens, towels, etc., washing machine, how to work the washing machine, because depending on how long you're going to be away, they may want to do some washing. When you're away, if there's any accidents, then they're going to want to wash that kind of stuff and everything. The details for the backup carer, make sure they've got that, because otherwise, that's not going to help them at all, right? And if your pet sitter isn't familiar with the area where you live, maybe take them around on a tour if you don't have time for that. Give them a list of all the nearby, like the vet, the pet hospitals, shops, and things like that. And this all leads me into emergency details. Hopefully, there won't be an emergency when you're away. There was no emergency when I was away, thank God. But you want to have everything set up and instructions around that just in case. So, nominate a backup carer. Already spoke about that. Ideally, someone who your pet has met before and likes and is close by. I mentioned I chose my friend Jenny. She's 30 minutes away. So, do organize all of that and share relevant contact details. The vet details, including how to contact and where they're located. Insurance information for your pet in case a vet visit is necessary. Medical records and history, not necessarily needed if you've got a regular local vet, but if there is an emergency and they need to go to the 24-hour vet center, then they're not necessarily going to have that information. So it can be helpful because they don't know your pet the way you can. Like in an emergency situation for you, you'd be able to go to the emergency hospital and tell them about your animal's history. Your pet sitter is not going to be able to do that, right? So making sure that information is available for your pet sitter if needed. Contact details for you. Now, if you're a friend, they'll already know how to contact you, right? But you might want to, if you're overseas and you're not using roaming because roaming can be very expensive. I wasn't using roaming. I was relying on, Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi at my stepmother's house, my mother's house, my accommodation, the airport. Like I tapped into all the free Wi-Fi when I was traveling. And whenever I did, I made sure that I checked in with Kathy, right? So most of the time I had access to Wi-Fi whilst I was away. And you can use something like WhatsApp, which is free messaging that you can use and is available with Wi-Fi. Even on some planes, you can access it if that tech is available, if that tech is working. So really great for just checking in and maintaining contact. Your itinerary, letting them know your itinerary can be helpful in case they, just so that they know when are you flying out, your stopovers, where are you going to be staying, when are you flying back. Keeping them updated. I've arrived, I'm safe, heading off now, boarding now. I was like landed in Dubai, about to board again, be home soon, have landed, got to do this on the way home. I'll be home about this time. Just keeping them abreast of what's going on so they have that certainty. They don't have to worry about it. And I can't remember if I said this, in case you're not contactable, like I was contactable. I was in an area where I always, regularly had access to Wi-Fi, and Kathy and I were in constant contact. But you might be in a situation where you don't have that, or your phone might break, or you may have left your phone at home, or you may have lost your phone. Things happen, right? So if your pet sitter can't get in contact with you, who can they get in contact with for help? For example, a friend or a family member, someone who knows your animals, that can help with information and care and things like that whilst you're not available, or that you might be able to contact maybe able to contact you via that other person. So if you're traveling with a family member, giving the pet sitter that family member's details. So I was traveling with my sister. I was also with my stepmother and my mother. So I didn't, but I could have, and probably should have, in hindsight, given those details to Kathy in case, I lost my phone or my phone broke or some other disaster preventing contact, right? So there are all my tips. If you are going away and leaving your pets for a certain period, as I mentioned, I've done up a handy little checklist for you, beautiful little PDF download. You can access that on my website. The link is in the show notes. So make sure you download that, even if you're not planning a trip. Download it now anyway, because you might be going for a trip and you might be listening to this episode in 5 years. And I can't guarantee that that download will still be on my website. So download it now. Head to the show notes now and click on the link and download it and save it. Don't just rely upon having it in your emails. The amount of times I get people saying, I can't find that download. When you get the email with the download, save it to your computer or your phone, whatever system you're using, so you don't have to rely on that email version. Sometimes email downloads expire. Okay, so do that with anytime you download anything. Okay, so love to hear from you on what you thought of that. Love if I missed anything, like if you travel frequently or you've just traveled once in your life and there's any tips in there that you think I don't have, that I haven't included, and that you think would be helpful, reach out, let me know, because I'd love to know those extra tips so that I can share those with people. Like I can update that checklist and add those tips in there. I can mention the extra tips on my socials, to my email community, all of that. So please reach out and let me know. Love to also hear from you if you have found this episode helpful. Also would love for you to write a review or write a comment. You can write comments on YouTube. You can write comments on Spotify. You can't on Apple Podcasts, but you can leave a review, whether that's a star rating or a written review. Would love to have you support the podcast and me in that way. And be sure to check out the beautiful pet foods available from the sponsor of this podcast, Frontier Pets. They provide better pet food for a better world with premium quality ingredients sourced from ethical Australian suppliers that are human grade and evolutionary appropriate for your dogs and cats. Learn more at frontierpets.com.au. And whilst you're there, make sure to check out their new range of boosters with their special introductory offer. And for all other Frontier Pets foods, you can get 15% off with the special discount code NaturalAnimal15. If you have ideas or show topics or guest ideas, head over to ruthhatton.com/podcast and fill out the feedback form. I would love to bring you the content that you want to hear. And so I'm not a mind reader. So let me know. Let me know what you'd like me to cover on the show in the future. Check out the show notes for all the links. And until next week, when I am in your ears or see you again or on YouTube, big love to you and your animal kin.